to get to that point where you're like, I, even though it's something I don't want to hear and I don't want to face, you have to be.
You don't have control over food.
Well, yeah, and to really be at a place where I can't keep on relying on the same thing that I get an advantage from. I mean, how people relate to food, and not even just food, but their body image, really. Food is secondary. But it's like you don't want to let that aspect go, because it's like it has all your hopes and dreams, and it's the one way that gives you a sense of like, I can feel better about myself. And to let that go is not like, oh yeah, it's so easy. It's not, it's very, very painful process. So, but like I said, when you've suffered significantly, the willingness to look in that direction there is, for my YouTube videos to make sense to you, you had to have heard the truth in them, right? Like, there's truth in it. There's no convincing, you hear it and you're like, even if it stings, there's truth in it. And so to finally reach out, there had to have been like, okay, I need to do it. I have a lot of followers that they are following and they hear what I'm saying, but they're not necessarily ready to be held responsible or to commit to it.
Right.
Anyways, so how'd you...
You're a little scary because you really get to it, and I think dieting and self-help or like body, a lot of that stuff out there is really we're trained to just do better. We're always just taught you're bad and you need to try harder.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to do anything like that. So it's kind of painful. I don't know. It's what you have to do, I think. I guess that's what I'm calling, because I think we've both been learning, watching your stuff for a while, that dealing with the root, like belief system, I guess, or identity or whatever, is what you have to really deal with. You can't just keep trying to improve yourself. I don't know how to explain it.
No, you just explained that very well. You just explained it very well. Eventually, you got to look inside rather than trying to fix the outside, trying to memorize a new way of trying it. Eventually you got to look at why you're seeking those goals, why those goals are important. No one, like you said, you go out there and everybody's just saying, well, the goal you should reach, and we're going to give you a new way to reach it. Well, we need to look at the why you're seeking that goal. What the fuck does that goal do for you? What are you going to get out of it? Clearly, the carrot that's been held in front of you, no one's questioning that as the problem. The problem is the carrot. I said no one's questioning the carrot. The carrot that you're chasing.
Yes, that's the point. Yeah, so you deal with it at such a deeper level. I think, you do have to, because we've noticed that, like, we have to be ready continually to really do the hard stuff of getting rid of, like, the eating disorder or the body image or whatever it is, instead of just trying to fix it kind of on a subconscious, like, I don't know,
Yeah. No, you gotta get to what it serves you. I think that's what really it comes down to, is what are you getting out of it that you're holding on to it for? It comes with such a high cost, but you're holding on to it for a reason. Right? There's a reason why you're doing what you're doing. There's a reason. And, even if you hate it, you're still getting something out of it. Otherwise, it would be really easy to recover.
Right.
You just let it go. But the downs, you have to be okay with the loss of letting it go. And that's where people suffer, is they are not willing to let go of the loss. And if they do, they're positioned, this is a common problem, is their position to feel sorry for themselves, which isn't really letting it go. That's like yearning and wanting it and actually believing that what they're seeking in body image is truly superior. And by letting it go, even though they get removed of all the mental illness, the depression, the obsessive compulsiveness, they still think that their life is lesser. So they end up just living in, the same thing without all the drama. Anyway, so tell me a little bit more about you. When you sent in your consult request form, there was no information. So give me a little bit of your background. I don't need a ton, but, how'd you find me?
Just off of YouTube, and then.
So were you looking up eating disorder stuff? Were you in a group and someone posted something?
No, I found you years ago. Years ago, I was doing the HCG protocol, I think. I can't remember one of them, and it said, I don't know what version of HCG it was. It was shots, I guess, but, there's so many websites. I don't know, but it was literally years ago, like 2014, 15, I think. And it recommended you buy the book, Weight Loss Apocalypse.
How old are you right now?
I'm 35, I guess. Yeah, 35. Yeah, I know how old I am. I'm just...
Okay.
Sorry, this call was very kind of, I don't know, sporadic, I guess.
Impulsive?
I'm a little all over the place about all of this.
No, it's okay. So you're 35. You found me via the HCG protocol and reading Weight Loss Apocalypse, and then you found my YouTubes.
Yes.
And that was a few years ago.
Yeah, I didn't find you on YouTube really until I think a year ago. I did. I had a hard time doing HCG. Well, I did it, and I did lose weight, and I did maintain it and feel better, and everything was fine. But I used to go to OA meetings. I just knew psychologically or subconsciously, and the HCG protocol really makes you face your stuff. If you actually follow it, it can be very hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you emotionally eat or any gratification or obsessiveness with food, or I guess what really helped me from your stuff and my sister, it helped her a lot too. Sorry, we watched a lot of your stuff, was dealing with sorry, I'm having a hard time. I don't know what is going on.
No, there's no worries. There's no don't worry. Don't stress out about whatever. Just
we can't believe her. I can't believe I'm talking to you. She couldn't believe you either. She's like, oh my goodness. She's like, I would love to talk to her. She thinks you're awesome, but you've been very instrumental and helpful in our lives of getting recovery instead of just losing weight and starting some weird diet and doing all that treadmill.
Yeah, you're in the process. That's good. I'm so glad. This is why I post those videos. It kind of gives people insight into what's going on. And even if you're not fully recovered, or you're in a process of becoming more aware of what's going on, which is so important to see what's going on. It gives that diet matrix, right? The diet body image less credibility, which relieves. It should feel very relieving for you. Even just by watching those YouTube videos, a lot of people just stop binging. They still might overeat. They still might have, and that's not everybody, obviously, but a lot of people get relief because they're not necessarily holding themselves so seriously to the body image or the diet industry once they start really getting into these videos. Because you're more aware of what body image is and what it means and why, so it takes the seriousness out of it. So I can see why that would be very helpful. So.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Like I said, you're very, very deep, and you just are really good at what you do. And it was just a very profound, life-changing concept, belief system, experience. I mean, it's shifted our entire psyches, I guess, really, because we were just really sick. And
probably it feels like you're being swept around and controlled like a river, like you're just being thrown around in a river and it's taking you wherever it's going to take you. Where now you're like, okay, if you probably have a little bit, again, more discernment of what's going on around you, rather than it just impulsively carrying you around and not knowing why it's so crazy. Like it's what I think it does is it just gives you that relative awareness of what this is, that it's not just you being impulsively like full of anxiety, I guess, around what's going on. You're at least more conscious of why you have the anxiety. Make sense? So, so where are you at today? So, what is it that was like, I gotta make that commitment. I gotta call her.
Well, that's the thing. Like last year, I guess it was 2016, 17. I did a round of HCG, and like I said, the only way I got through it and her was watching your videos. I guess maybe she did it too. I don't know, but she was just. It was just at the time for us to get to the deeper root issues of what in the world was wrong with us and making us crazy and making us do diets all the time, and like something just broke where we were like, this is insane, you know, like we're crazy kind of.
Yeah, doing the same thing over and over again, over and over again. Again, not really looking at the desire to lose weight as what has to be looked at and questioned.
Yeah.
You have to question it.
Yeah.
That's not easy.
Yeah. No, that's really the kicker. And that's probably where I've been struggling recently. I've been having medical procedures done, and just I've had some health problems this year or last year, I guess, 17. I've been on medical leave at times and just medical procedures in the hospital, and it's in my gut, and it's been challenging, but part of it was I was on different medications, and they maybe put on probably 10 pounds maybe, and give or take, and the thing was, cognitively, I knew it was not a big deal.
Yeah.
I knew it was, but I don't know, my soul, my psyche, like something in me was just this other crazy lady just had to lose the weight. Like can't even talk, just a possessed demon or something.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. Yeah, that's totally what it feels like. It's very like sketchy, animalistic. You're kind of like the crazy person in the cave.
Trying to get a fix.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Well, and it is like a fix. Like I was in drug withdrawal. Like I was like,
no, that's exactly what it feels like. But it's from the thinness and the ego of the thinness and the survival that you've attached to thinness. So if you gain weight, it feels like your survival is being threatened, and that's why. Do you mind telling me how much you weigh?
No, not at all. Probably 130, probably.
Okay.
Because normally it would be like 120.
Okay.
So probably not like that. I don't weigh regularly at all.
Got it.
Quit doing that a long
yeah.
time ago.
How tall are you?
Probably in that vicinity. Like 5'5" maybe.
Okay, so you're anorexic. You're on the anorexic side of the process.
Yeah, I've always worked more toward that.
For sure. I would not be surprised. Yeah. Oh, are you comfortable if I record this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, because I'm recording. I forgot to tell you I was recording. Someone an observer to this conversation would have assumed that you were 250 pounds.
Yeah, I know. That's the crazy part.
Well, that to me is not crazy at all. It just, people assume that to have these issues, you have to be really big, and it's really hard because you have all these physical problems. And it's so relative. It's a relative perspective. So when I work with someone on the anorexic side, they physically feel like they are obese. You physically believe it because your standards are so strict. You're super strict with. So even though we could look at someone and the clients I work with who are an identical brain, identical thought process, right? But they're 250 pounds. They feel the same way you do about it. To you, you being 130 pounds is horrible. It's horrible. You get withdrawals. You feel like you have to hide. You're embarrassed. You can't go out in public. You feel disgust, literal disgust with your body, grabbing your stomach, thinking it's horrible. You are identical, a mirror image to someone who's morbidly obese.
Yeah.
So, and that's where people make the assumption, well, what is Robin? No, she's never been overweight. She doesn't know. And it's like, okay. It's not a physical problem. It's the brain. It's your mind. It's your belief patterns. It's how you think. And the reality of it is that when you look at eating disorders and how they've been looked at, to classify anorexia as different than binge eating is naive. It is the same. It's naive. You are the same. It's the same belief system. The same belief system.
Sorry, I'm taking notes.
That's okay. Well, you're going to get this video, so you can re-listen to it. But anorexia and binge eating are the same thing. It's a spectrum of either defending yourself or being in apathy around it. I have failed. I suck. I'm a horrible person. I can't even try. And then when you do try, you feel so overwhelmed that it's like the binge eaters that I work with who are in the 300, 400 pound range have so much apathy around it, but they feel completely paralyzed by the degree of work they have to do to get to the thinner ideology that they're holding themselves to. So they're no different than you. They're just have far more to accomplish, which gives them a sense of like hopelessness. So they're on the apathy side of survival with it. It's hopeless. Living in a constant state of shame, but they're still holding the same anorexic belief system, which brings them to that point. So, yeah, it's the study of this behavioral symptom, the symptom of eating issues, that symptom of the underlying issues, they really need to look at it differently. Right? The way people have been looking at this is it's about the food. Right? But I knew when, of course it's about the food, but the only reason it's about the food is because I'm trying to micromanage it and manipulate it and and I have constant shame about what I'm eating because everything is about being thinner or maintaining thinness, right? So I wouldn't have shame when I ate that food if I didn't believe in the food religion of bad and good food based on the fear of threat of gaining weight. I wouldn't, or the unhealthy threat. So if you don't believe in food morality or food survival that way, then you wouldn't have the same shame. It wouldn't create the I failed, I might as well. You wouldn't go through that process, right? So by taking the focus off of the food and how you're behaving with food, and it would change the entire eating disorder approach that is currently going on right now, right? To completely remove the concept of eating from this and going into the survival mechanisms attached to thinnerness. Then there would be so much like, oh, okay. No wonder they're doing this. That's not a mystery. No wonder you're binging. That's not mysterious anymore. Right? That changes a lot of things. And so, for someone like yourself, I could say, well, predictably, because you're still holding on to this desire to stay thin and be thin, that it's going to absolutely project into dieting as a weapon, as a shield. Diets are very important because they are what you use to control your fear of gaining weight. Right? And they also not just control the fear of gaining weight, but they provide the means to this heaven you believe exists in thinness. This idea that when you're thin, you will feel safe, you will feel confident, you will feel that you can be yourself and life will begin for you when you're thin, right? So diets ultimately become the mechanism that holds you hostage. Right? You're held hostage by this abusive system because they hold, it's like they are the diet industry and the health industry has proprietary ownership of your thinness and healthiness, right? So it's really not your love of the dieting, it's your love of what you think you're going to get out of it. Right? So that's why the diets are so important. It's a shield from you gaining weight. It's a weapon for you to get your thinness. So you're using it to two directions, right? But yet at the same time, those diets are what are triggering this primal need and desire for food. So when someone comes to me, it's like, well, I know you're obsessed about food. That to me is understandable. I don't even need to know who you are. You're human. If you're dieting, you're obsessed about food. Totally. All the time. You think about it all the time. That to me is the suffering that people, when they come to me, they want relief. They don't want to think about food all the time. They don't want to have food be their all or nothing sense of, did I do a good job? They're sick and tired of it. They want to be able to eat and not have it run their entire day. Right? By the time someone has an eating disorder, not just disordered eating or dysfunctional eating, by the time someone actually has a disorder where it is 95% of their waking consciousness is devoted to their diet, their thinness, and food, right? That's a sign you are in a severe state of survival mode. Like you are in a severe survival problem. Right? You are that crazy sketched out animal hiding in a cave, frothing at the mouth, eyes are bugged out, you're paranoid, right?
Yeah,
and so,
yeah, exactly. I mean,
and those symptoms go away when you feel that you are thinner because you feel safe. So if you don't, so you see why the idea of being thinner, why it's so hard to let go of, because that's what you do to feel safe. If I'm thin, I feel safe. I feel better. I feel calmer. I get that melting sense of relief, right? That's your drug, if you want to call it that. That's your survival. It's an idea, it's a concept that you are surviving. The problem, however, if you haven't figured this out yet, is that it requires for you to maintain that safe place. You have to hide from reality. You have to constantly be disengaged from reality. You can't you can't get a steroid shot. You can't go to the hospital and gain 10 pounds. You can't have something that makes you sensitive to gain. You can't be a woman. You can't have a menstrual cycle. Children, oh my God, childbirth, what a threat.
Right. Yeah.
So you have to be inhumane. You can't be a human. You have to be like a rock. And that requires obsessiveness. You can't just be alive. You have to devote your entire awareness to fixating on keeping the body safe, like it is life and death. Like thinness is life and death. Yeah. So you're cannibalizing your own life with this survival mechanism. So you're killing your life. You're lifeless, seeking it through thinnerness. And however, the means to getting to thinnerness is threatening your life. Making sense?
Yes.
Okay. So I've just been blah, 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 rambling on. Give me a little bit more details about what you're really looking for in this consultation. What is it that you wanted out of this consultation?
Well, I think you gave it to me, honestly. I think that was what I needed to hear. You thought you were blabbing, but it was really, really good. That is what I need. That's what you were saying, all that stuff. I took notes. I know you said you'll send me a video or a whatever recording, but
you said you were in Patreon. I'll post this at some point in the next week or two, but I'll send the direct link to you today when it's uploaded. So you can re-listen to it. So, understanding that, have you watched any of the YouTubes where I talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and
I mean, I think, probably a while back, but,
So what's happening, right? Because we are pack animals. I want you to look at yourself as an animal, like a dog.
Okay.
Like we're animals. So, we have very predictable needs, similar to when you get a dog. Do you have any dogs? Have you ever had a dog?
I'm hoping to get one,
Okay, well,
I have a cat. I do
okay,
have a cat.
you have a cat. Cats are the same. Cats are, they're different, but they are similar and they really need companionship. They're no different. They just are very particular about their companionship and their needs about it, right? So we're more, you could say, more like a dog in that we really, really are wired to seek companionship because our survival relies on it. Like a dog actually can survive on its own, but if there's a pack of dogs, they're more likely to survive, right? Same with a cat. A cat can survive alone in general, but it certainly helps to be around other animals to cohabitate with, right? To co-survive. And that actually is common throughout the entire animal kingdom. We're no different, right? Maslow is a scientist. He studied human behavior and fundamental human psychology, and he created he created a theory which has now been studied for decades, and it's still being used to teach basic human fundamental behavioral psychology because we're so predictable, right? It's like how dogs are predictable and cats are predictable. You can kind of tell their behaviors and then it's not surprising that they are the way they are. So we're the same way. For some reason, we think we're so much better than that, but we're not. We're total animals. And we're very predictable.
Right.
Say that again?
I said right, yeah.
Yeah, so he observed that our behavior is very foundationally focused in on, and our psychological drives and motivations, as human beings are fundamental, but yet, and they're stacked, meaning we want to prioritize our survival before anything. Like the things that are necessary to live, our minds are wired to prioritize those over everything, right? And as our fundamental survival needs have been met and they are secure and we feel good about their security, then we can get into higher thinking and creativity and those aspects of being a human that really provides us pleasure and joy, right? Playing, creativity, expressing art, those are all things that are like really benefits when you are surviving, right? Your survival has been met. So he really studied human mechanisms around survival. The foundation of our wiring, what do you think the most important need is to life and death?
I guess it's oxygen, water.
You got it. Yeah, the physiological, basic physical needs. So oxygen, water, and food. Food is a big one, right? Because food and water kind of go hand in hand. You need both. And where there's water, there's food. Where there's food, there's water, right? Yeah, air, being able to breathe. Clearly, we don't have air disorders right now, do we? I wouldn't be surprised in very toxic environments. If you go to China, they're wearing face masks all the time. They probably have some like obsessive compulsive fear around breathing disorders, right? Fear of, air quality, which is understandable, right? So you can look at the foundation of our brain and what we want to feel good and safe with, and you can look at food is a big one. Making sure you have, and it's not just I want to feel secure with food. Food is multidimensional. Not only do we want to feel that we have food readily available, like I have access to food today. I want to make sure I have enough food today. So I have food, I have enough. I have enough to feed my family, my children, to support my dog and my bearded dragon back there, and I have a little bird. I'm always thinking about their access to food too, and that's part of our wiring as animals, right? Because it's so foundational to life and death, making sure we are fed, right? So do I have access to food? Do I have enough food? The third would be, can I get more? So it's not just today's needs. It is the ability to get more food. That you can see this would be why for centuries why harvesting and preserving food is so important, and why so much went into making sure we can have food during the winter months where there is no access to food and food isn't growing. And then when we do have food, how to preserve it, how to maintain it, right? Those are all super important to our sense of safety in our life. So, do I have food? Do I have enough food? Can I get more? And here's another really important one. Is it safe to eat? Could you imagine over the thousands of years, over the millennia, of human evolution, how important the safety of the food was, that if it's toxic, you could die. Oh, she ate that plant and died. Maybe we shouldn't eat that plant. I have to tell my kids, we got to make sure they know. I'm going to obsess over what it looks like. I got to tell each generation. We need to have basically a list of foods that kill people, that have terrible, terrible reactions, right? So is it safe to eat? So if we look at the primal survival threat around awareness, the awareness of, if I have food, can I get more food, and is it safe to eat? That would be extremely inflammatory, or it magnifies your need to survival needs. Survival, you could say, if we think about it, you could say symptoms of someone in survival is they're very myopic. They're hyper obsessed about what they need to get accomplished. They're more perfectionistic, very little graciousness. They're, again, obsessed, micromanaging, looking at every little detail, right? That's a lot of energy being focused into magnifying these specific needs. And you could see why that would be important, right? So if you're living in famine, why you would be obsessed about finding seeds, where they might be. We need to find some seeds. And then understanding it, and why that would become highly important in our overall thought process during the day and how we're motivated. Like what we do with our energy in the day is going to be more devoted to these primal survival mechanisms. It's almost like your whole brain says, we don't have time for anything other than this one thing. And so what Maslow studied is that when food is threatened, everything gets neglected. Everything else. Because it's so important to your life over the course of the next few weeks. Death is around the corner. Make sense?
Yeah, that's really, 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 really good.
Well, it's kind of important. So that's the foundation of our human behavior. Our human motives, our human drive, our human mind prioritizes that over everything. Okay, because it's foundational to survival. The next thing he found was our environment, our environmental safety. Can I go to the bathroom safely? And are we clean? Can I wash my hands? Do I have clothing that is beneficial to protect me from the outside elements? Coats, hats, gloves to protect my ears. Do I have a way to cool off in the summertime? Those are really important. Why we need to check the weather every day. That's such a primary animal thing to do, right? Because we want to understand our environment. So that environmental safety, right? This would be like our nesting instincts. Why we want our house to have, why we get a little crazy, right? When we're pregnant around organizing crap and sweeping things and the cleanliness of things. And we do it different times during our menstrual cycle. We become that way. Nothing you could do about it. We're talking millennia of evolution backing these behaviors. They're not something to be ashamed of, okay? The third hierarchy of need, so keep in mind that it's like a pyramid. The foundation of everything is your food and water. Your brain prioritizes that over everything, and it's the most sensitive to survival triggers, okay? The next would be environmental, healthcare, stuff like that. The next one up is our pack animal needs to cohabitate with others to survive. You're more likely to survive in the wilderness if there's even just one other person there with you. So having a safe group of people that you can live and commingle and co-work with and to share life with is actually very important to our survival. That's why we react in stress or survival mechanisms if we feel judged, if we feel criticized, because it's like threatening our sense of survival with our tribe or pack. In other words, we are driven to prioritize, not as a primary or even a secondary need, but as a third hierarchy need. We want to feel lovable. We want to feel that we are contributing and that our contribution is seen as valuable. We want to feel lovable. Love is how it comes across. Love, kindness, that we are appreciating each other. We would call that love. Okay? Feeling, the word a lot of people use is feeling connected to others. We want to feel connected or bonded. Feeling that we are, we have, God, spacing this word. Yeah, that we're lovable. That's how I would describe it. We all want to feel lovable. If you do not feel lovable, okay, then you're going to want to find ways to feel lovable, right? If you don't feel that you are intrinsically lovable, as just the way you are, you're going to seek lovability extrinsically. What others will gravitate to you. If you don't feel there's something worthy inside you, you're going to seek what others, the obvious things to gain praise. Okay? Is that making sense?
Yeah, that's really, really good. What are the obvious things?
Religious. To me, in our current society, religion is a big one. What religion are you? That's a big one in the United States because it's so defining to our history. We don't necessarily, in our history, attach to our country, because the people who came here left their country to establish a new one, but it was based on your belief in God or not, you know. Yeah. And the freedom of religion was very, very defining. So if you look at our very juvenile history, it's based on that, okay? And thank goodness it's evolving, right? Because there's been a lot of problems. A lot of benefits, a lot of problems based on identifying your value based on assimilating to belief systems given to you by religion. The other thing is body image. If you look at body image right now, what do you think the majority of women especially are seeking to feel lovable? Sexual attractiveness, appeasing what we think is sexually arousing to men, you know, and that is not new. There's been different varieties of body image ideals that have been used in different cultures throughout different times. You know, if you look at tribes in Africa with the rings, or South America with the rings around the necks, you can look at foot binding, over 1,000 years of foot binding in China, where girls were valued based on how small you could get their feet. 3 to 4 inches was what was ideal in China. And if your feet were bigger than 4 inches and you went up to, that you were seen like stigmatized as lazy, not worth it. And people, you can imagine their psychological wiring around their feet were similar to ours, connected to our body fat. You know, in Egypt time, it had a lot to do with hair, you know, because they shaved their heads to get rid of lice and pestilence in the hair. It was easier to just shave heads. And so they classified people's value and where they were in society based on the type of hair they had. You know, the type of wig, the type of hair. If they had hair, that meant they were super rich. You know, different things like that. So this concept of wanting to feel lovable, and the needing to get it from outside of yourself by someone validating your worth, that is not new, and that's very human in terms of survival mechanisms. The problem is, if you are relying on someone else's approval, you can never really get out of survival mode. It never secures that third hierarchy of need. because you constantly have to manage other people's opinion about you. So it's like you have to be a chameleon. You can never really be who you are and feel safe within yourself. You're constantly seeking that sense of relief from getting other people's approval and proving that you're a good person. That's the narcissism, where people are trying to prove that they are superior people through the superficiality of themselves. It's never really coming from within. It's always the superficial mechanisms, like the way I look, my youth, my hair, my eyelashes, my boobs, my butt, my thinner waist, my thinness, my healthiness. So there's constant attachments to what they believe is desirable to others. What is desirable to others? So that's important right there. The third hierarchy of need, the goal, is, and our wiring is to feel that we are lovable. The problem is if you are seeking it, you are giving that lovability, your the security of your feeling lovable, you are giving to others. They validate you, therefore you are valuable, right? So you see why that would make you vulnerable to never really feeling complete as a person, never really feeling good about yourself.
Yeah.
Because it requires that you meet standards, that you constantly have to work and prove yourself. Can you see our entire culture is based on that? You need to improve yourself. You should always be working on yourself. You need to be better. Let's sell you this book. We're going to sell you a program. We're going to sell you this weight loss program. We're going to sell you thinness. We're going to sell you this waist shaping, cinching thing. You have to be more fit. You need to be healthier. You need to be, purer. There's all of these rules around how you're going to make yourself a better person. Going to church, believing in the specific, political system.
Right.
Being smarter. You have to make yourself better. You're not intrinsically lovable until you are smart. Only smart people are respectable. So you can see our country and our culture has capitalized on the idea that you can pay to get better. So they're basically using a survival mechanism to make money. To sell survival. You'll survive if you're thinner. You'll be lovable if you're thinner. Look at almost everything out there right now in terms of self-help. What are they really trying to help you do? To feel lovable? By accommodating to their rituals, their thoughts, their belief patterns, right? So the issue, I believe, with eating disorders, which I don't think is an eating disorder at all, I think it is more of a syndrome around two survival mechanisms competing with each other. Okay? You're basically trying to secure the third hierarchy of need, the third tier up, not the first most important, not the second most important, but the third important. You're trying to secure the third important need of feeling lovable by being thinner, which requires that you basically wage war and compete with your first hierarchy of need.
Yeah.
If you think about diets, one of the most manipulative ways they actually threaten your first hierarchy of need and stimulate this survival mechanism is by saying that food is bad. It is not safe. It is toxic. Look at the words. I want you to maybe go and look at diet groups, especially ones that are like health minded, and how much they post about these foods cause cancer. These foods are dangerous. Foods you shouldn't feed your children. The direct threat to the safety of food that is out there right now. How that impacts our psychology as animals. It's funny. I'm laughing at it because it's like, no shit, you're going to have an obsessive problem around your food. You're going to be micromanaging it. You're going to be reading labels like, oh my God, you're crazy, right? And it feels crazy, but you think you're going to benefit. You think that it's going to make you feel confident. So they're confusing. Yeah. They're unaware of what's going on, but it's not a disorder. To me, so natural human instinct. We're watching. It just is bizarre when we have so much abundance around us. It doesn't make sense. We're not in a third world environment where we need to really be scared about the purity of the water we're drinking. Right? But we're so freaked out about it that we have all of these mechanisms like pH, and we have all this stuff, which to some degree is relevant, but not to the third world relevance that exists and that our mechanisms are actually aligned with. This isn't a third world problem. We're dealing with a first world problem, that there's too much chlorine in your water. First world fucking problem. Right? But they're responding. Their brains are responding as if it's a third world problem because our brains are third world oriented to survive. Right? So when you look at this whole entire diet industry, they are telling you that you will feel lovable. You will feel complete. You will have that freedom of being a real human being and having confidence to be yourself and to relax. Okay, they're selling survival through threatening food. How's that going to work out?
Yeah, it doesn't work. Yeah.
No, because you're going to be stuck in sketchy animal brain, obsessively, compulsively looking at food under a microscope, because that's how your brain responds to survival with food, is it becomes super obsessive. And then you're super afraid and you can't go out in public. Plus you have all these desires to want to participate with culture because you're a pack animal, and eating together is such a beneficial survival. It's like you want to be with your tribe. Food is like symbolic of I love you, you love me, here's some food. So it's a part of our animal need to want to eat with each other, to share food, because it is the most important survival need. And so to share food is actually very symbolic of safety. But yet you're not allowed to do that when you're dieting, right? You can't do that. That's a threat. Don't go out in public. Don't go to restaurants. Don't participate. It's take your food in your Tupperware. Makes sense? Like you're not, that's how unsafe you feel with food, and how you can look at, that's what people are willing to do to be thin in order to feel lovable. And is it really intrinsic lovability that they're getting, or is it the idea that I will get approval by meeting a standard that other people perceive as lovable?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
You have an attachment. We can say that lovability, it's important, it's not attached to anything, that it's unconditional. So, you'll hear commonly in, gurus and higher thinkers and higher consciousness, the concept of what unconditional love is, and the need for grace, forgiveness, lenience, open-mindedness, why those things would be important, right? Because it allows you to look at who you are and to define your lovability from what is truthful versus based on brainwashing of a society who is making hundreds of trillions of dollars selling a body image ideal or any concept that requires you change who you are and become what they want you to be for the illusion that you're going to be lovable, because it's not even real. It's fake. Superficial. It's conditional. I have to be this condition to feel lovable. So can you see why when you gain 10 pounds, all of a sudden you went into that sketchy, like skin crawling, I have to do something? Why that would be so triggering for you? Because you have to be 10 pounds less to feel I'm approvable. But at the same time, you have to restrict your food. So now you're obsessed on your food because the food restrictions is now the mechanism for you to feel lovable. That is anorexia right there. I'd rather die than feel intrinsically lovable. They'd rather die because they don't necessarily feel or have a sense of that. I have to move. The sun just came in. When you watch this, it looks like I'm an angel. Okay. Let me move over here. Okay, that's a little better. Actually, hold on. I'm just got to move because the sun is just right in I have no more storage on my computer upstairs, so I've got to use my laptop down here. Yet another first world problem. Okay. So you have to look at, the symptoms that you have, right?
Yeah.
And what do you think they're coming from? Where are they coming from? What hierarchy of need is being threatened right now or is not secure?
I'm so sorry, I couldn't hear you. What did you just say? The phone cut out. What did you say?
I said, which hierarchy of need or needs are not secure based on the symptoms you're experiencing as an animal?
Yeah, I think the root, well, who knows where it started, which one, but I definitely think 3 and 1. Yeah.
So if you, tell me this, if you were told you'll never be 130 pounds again, you're going to be 150 pounds the rest of your life, forever, for whatever reason, you have a disease or you have something, okay? And it's permanent, for the rest of your life, tell me how you would respond to that.
Well, I think I'm okay. I think you really nailed it on the head, and I wanted to tell you, I had watched some video recently.
Hold on, am I on speakerphone right now? Are you there?
It switches back from Bluetooth occasionally, but I turned the Bluetooth off, I think.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Yeah. So I think I watched some of your videos, is what I was saying recently, and sorry, this is all just kind of like and you talked about, I don't know what I was telling you, but I don't even remember.
Okay, I don't worry about it. I had asked, how would it feel if you had to be 150 pounds? There's no hope for change. Let's go higher. Let's get out of your comfort zone. Let's go to 180. Yeah. Let's go to 180. You're going to have to gain 50 pounds and it will be there forever permanently. How would that impact your relationship with food?
Well, I think having the anorexic tendency I had, I think internally, because I would go to OA meetings off and on in my life, and what you said really nailed on the head, because I felt, even if I was at 120, I felt like I was carrying around a lot of weight and guilt and shame because I was supposed to be, let's say, 110. It was just all insane. And I would say that. I would be like, it's like, I don't know, but, and I would say that I keep getting confused. I don't know why. I think, the lovability is all that really stands out for me to say at the moment. I think that's really everything you talked about, that's really key, because I think my number one was constantly in jeopardy, whether I was 110 or 180.
For sure.
Not weigh 110.
For sure, because you still feel, even if you were 110 pounds, you have to keep it and maintain that. And so you cannot let up on food. And actually, it becomes more paranoid. You become more isolated because you are so afraid to gain weight because that would be embarrassing. So it's that pride that you attach to it. Like, I done it. I did it. Now if I lose it, that means that I'm a fraud. It was a lie. I'm not really special. I don't have anything unique. I don't really have this specialness to me. It's, so it becomes really, really, really intense. And that's where bulimia often comes in, because your impulsivity to binge is going to be a lot higher with that strictness, right? Because the animal nature wins out in the end to secure your first hierarchy of need. And what often happens when anorexics start binging is they start purging because they cannot gain weight. But going back to my question, What would happen if you were told you're going to have to be 180 pounds for the rest of your life? Tell me what that would do with how you relate to food. What would happen to your relationship with food if you were no hope for change? You will always be 180 pounds forever, period, permanent.
Well, I think it would actually make it much easier.
Wouldn't it? Why do you think? Let's go into that.
Stress, the fear of gaining weight, anxiety around eating because of the fear of gaining weight would just go.
You got it. Well, and I think what's important, what's important to this question is that you're aware if there's no hope for weight loss, right? When someone believes, okay, I can be 180 pounds, but I'm going to make it go down, they still are going to have those eating issues because they're still in their mind going to have an enforced famine. There's still going to be, food is still threatening, food still needs to be managed, right? But if it is permanent, and the body is going to be managing its weight no matter what, the relationship with food then naturally diminishes because there's no point to micromanaging. Food is no longer a threat. If that makes sense. Does that make, do you understand that? Why you would come to like, what would be easier? It would be easier. Tell me how that would change your whole, like, how would that affect how you've identified yourself?
Yeah, that's the thing. Dealing with really, really root belief systems I've suffered with off and on my whole life, really.
Well, you would really challenge your body image identity because you've identified in your mind as a thin body. And so if you can't have that thin body, that would be challenged and you'd have to actually go into what your true identity is. Does that make sense? What is your actual identity if it's not about thinness? If it's not attached to a thinner body and the thinner body isn't relevant for you, then how would you identify yourself? Again, this goes back into who are you? What is your nature? Go into what's nature for you. Would you associate your lovability to something superficial again? Would you go, oh, well, I should be something else? Would you do that again knowing how this has impacted you? Wouldn't you rather just feel like use your real persona? Like what's the real persona in there versus a fake persona? Because you can say I created, this is a lot of people when they talk about ego, ego is there's the idea of who I am, which is an idea, a concept that's been constructed mentally. That's your ego. Okay. And then there's the reality of what exists. That is within you and within everybody. It's the only thing you're actually aware of, which is there is something I'm aware of. There's an I that I'm experiencing. That's the only thing that's actually truthful, right? There's a me, I exist. There's an existence here that I'm experiencing, right? That's what we call I'm alive. So you have that, but then the construction of who you are, is that even real? Or is it what you've created based on the desire for others to love you? Make sense? There is the ego, which is your survival identity. That's the identity of wanting to feel lovable, but needing others to love you. So constructing an identity that you think is lovable. It's mental constructed, right? It would be like, my name is Robin and I am 5'9". I'm super athletic. I'm really smart. I have ADD, so I'm a little out there. Those are not real. They're concepts. They're labels.
That's good.
Make sense? That's not truthful.
Yeah.
Those are just concepts that I'm going to use to separate myself from other people to go, I'm special and I'm me. That's not me. What I'm experiencing actually is just an idea that I'm aware I exist. There's an awareness of existence. For me to actually have that awareness, I had to go through a preparation to die. And a lot of people who have out of bodies or near deaths have that awareness because they don't necessarily die next. They stay alive, but they're aware there's a difference between the existence that I am experiencing and the concept of life that we've created in our minds. Right? So for me, it would have been, I am Mormon. I am hot. I have a curly hair. You know, my eyes are green. Like, I have a degree in exercise science. I am so smart. You know, those are concepts. That's not real love for what's within. You know, if you go into the essence of the life that you're existing, which you have nothing to do with. You didn't create it. You're basically just showed up and here it is. It's not even called Robin. I don't even know what it is. It's an essence of being that is very loving. I go into that feeling of what it feels like. It's so loving. It is really fun. I've often described it as like rainbows and unicorns. I just want to have fun. Let's play. Let's go play. Let's do something that's like, let's create and let's be childish. You know, there's a real childish energy to it. I can't even claim that as Robin, right? Because I know you have the same feeling inside of you. You're having an awareness of me, or an existence of I, if you want to call it that, that is very pure in its nature. It isn't malicious. It isn't pretentious. It isn't narcissistic. It isn't self-centered. It's actually wanting to connect, wanting to enjoy itself with others, wanting to be, right? The problem is that you decided at some point that the only way for that inner sense of being to exist is in a thin body that other people like and approve of. Makes sense? So when you go into who would you be if you were in a body that's 180 pounds or 200 pounds, who would you be? Really think about that. What would it be like to be in a body that's, paralyzed or paraplegic, or that has a physical limitation, a true physical limitation? What would that be like?
Well, it would be the same. True.
It would be what?
I mean, it would be the same.
Well, you would be the same. That existence would not be any different, would it?
Right, yeah.
That awareness or consciousness that you're alone aware of. I'm not aware of what you're experiencing. I don't have that awareness. I only am aware of what I'm experiencing, right? I can just deduct that we're both experiencing a sense of aliveness, and there is a concept of me, right? But is the concept of that I'm experiencing of me, is that sense of me different than yours?
No.
You got it, right? It's like, well, it probably feels the same as mine. There's a sense of me. I'm alive and I'm experiencing it. Right? Right? So tell me what that would be like in a body that's 200 pounds. Is it different?
Well, I've been about 200 pounds, and it was the same. That's my point. That's what you're kind of uncovering for me.
Yeah. So if you got in a car wreck and you lost your legs and you're permanently in a wheelchair,
it would be the same. Yeah.
It would still be the same. It's still a concept of I'm aware, I'm conscious, I'm the body that is that is a conduit to experiencing this planet is still giving me access to hearing, sight, smells. I still have thoughts. I still have this pleasure and desire to see a good movie. I love color. I still want to express myself through fabric and clothing, and none of that changes, does it?
Right.
So when you go to a movie theater, is your experience of that movie different just because you have half a body?
No.
Is your experience as an existence of something, is that existence half of an existence because you have half a body?
No.
You got it.
Wow. Wow. Well, it's probably time. I don't want to go over your time, but that was amazing. That's it. Yeah.
No, we still have 25 minutes. We have an hour and a half.
Oh, really?
No.
Okay.
Do you have time? Do you need to go?
Oh, no, I do.
Okay.
Everything you say is very, very profound.
Well,
very.
It's very important because you can see what you've done is said, I am the body in the very specific, I only exist. My existence only exists in a body that meets these parameters in my head. I have to be 110 pounds. I have to be this. So what you've done is you've attached your survival as a human and your existence as a life to a thinner body. Can you see then why it would make sense that you would be so fucking crazy with eating disorders and dieting? So you see how I don't think that's a disorder. I think it's survival.
You don't think it's what?
I don't think it's a disorder. I think it's a survival. You're trying to survive through that tiny thin body. That thin body to you is life. And so if it's that important and gives you that much, could you see why then someone would be so obsessive around their restrictions with food? Right? So is it really about the dieting? Is it really about dieting, or is it about wanting to live, be alive? You just connected it to a thin body. So by looking at it, that's why it's so profound when you're like, oh, well, that feeling that exists, that sense of I that is experiencing life would be the same sense of I that's experiencing life, whether I'm 200 pounds, 500 pounds, 110 pounds, whether I'm pregnant and have a body inside my body, whether, I'm still presently aware that I am in a space of existence that is experiencing I, whatever that is. Whether I'm 35 or 25. That's why the concept of aging is like that feeling of I that exists does not age. The body does. Right? So your sense of existence isn't going to be any different when you're 80 if you make it that far. It'll still feel the same. The concept that I am experiencing a life. I am experiencing it. Whether it's in a, again, if you were to die and get reborn, what if you're in a black body? What if you're in a Mexican body? What if you're in a different gender? Does that existence of self really change?
No.
Mm-mm.
It's good.
Yeah, well, so what the goal would be for you, so that because your third hierarchy of need is the trigger. Okay, you wouldn't be threatening your food if you didn't have that third hierarchy need triggered. That's why I went to, if you were 180 pounds, you were like, oh, it'd be so relieving with food. I know, the food issue isn't even the problem. Okay, of course, you have all these consequences because you're threatening food. So now you live in that sketched out animal crazy train. But when we go into that need to feel lovable or to feel that you exist, that right there has to be reconciled. Once that's reconciled, there's no point to dieting. Why the fuck would you need to lose weight? What's the point of that? What do you get out of being thinner? Does that make sense? What does existing get out of being thinner?
Yeah, nothing.
No, that's an illusion, right? That's an illusion. That your existence is being thinner. But really, when you understand it, that the existence has nothing to do with the conditions of the body other than it is alive, then it makes no sense to even waste your time on trying to change the condition of the body that is in doing it on its own. It doesn't need you. It needs very little from you, right? It needs you to go pee when you need to go pee. It needs you to go to sleep when it's tired, but it tells you all that stuff. So you don't even have to tell the body, I'm tired, you need to be tired, we all got to go to sleep. No, it does it for you without you even thinking about it, right? The concept of health, do we really need to know what that is? Or can we just rely on millennia of evolution and creation, if you want to call that? Can we just rely on that this was made the way it is and it'll function without me having to manage it, right? And then in reality, what that comes down to is this idea that if the body dies, I die. Well, I want you to think about that. if the body dies, if you are your body, you die too, right? So when you realize the essence of I'm experiencing isn't physical, it's not a body. The body is giving me an experience or a reception of this planet and earth so I can actually experience while I'm here. But there's a soul essence, there's an essence or a beingness in this that doesn't die, right? Again, it could be attached to different bodies and it would feel the same. A body would physically feel different, right? If I were 500 pounds, I'd physically feel different than I do in this body. But the essence of beingness or the experience that I'm witnessing doesn't change, right? Am I confusing you?
No.
So in order for you to be relieved, you have to really question, who am I? What is this I that I'm experiencing? And is it lovable? Is it something that I am willing to love? Because you're the only one experiencing it, right? I'm not experiencing your awareness of I or me. There's an existence here that you are experiencing that is yours, correct? Is there anybody else who's experiencing that for you and can be aware of what that is?
No.
So can you actually get validation of the lovability of that from anybody?
No.
It's impossible. You're the only one experiencing it. So if you don't think it's lovable, if you don't think that that's worth anything, can you see why you would go to the facades or external things to then make up what you think doesn't, like if you don't value that, why you would need other people to value your life for you. That's a great way to put it. You're needing other people to value your life for you. And how is that even possible when they don't have an experience of your life? How do they know it's valuable or not?
That's really, 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 really good.
Right, you're the only one experiencing that. So is it beautiful to you?
Yeah.
You know the way I felt about it in the moment I had that awareness? It was the most sweetest little spirit ever.
It was what?
The sweetest spirit that was in there. It was so sweet, so loving, so beautiful. And I loved it so much in that moment. And I realized not even my mother could do it. Not even my mother. You know, I'm the only one that was aware of that sweetness.
Yeah. It's almost like a little girl, and she's so genuine.
It's a child. It's like, oh, there's an essence of lovingness and sweetness and kindness and just that I have there that no one else is aware of but me. And it's not necessarily different than someone else's feeling of it. It's just that I'm the one that has to acknowledge that that has value. You know, that my awareness of life and the existence that I'm experiencing, that has value. And I'm the only one that can value it because I'm the only one that's experiencing it. So to rely on someone else to tell me if it's valuable or not is a lie, even if they do think it's valuable. They don't know what it is they're valuing. Only I am experiencing that. So that in itself, you could say, is transformational. To be aware, I am the only one experiencing I. Whatever that is. So I have to value that. Unconditionally, if it's in a bigger body, a thinner body, if I, the experiencer that's within me doesn't need to have a very specific condition of body. It doesn't need other people being sexually attracted to me. It doesn't need other people thinking I'm beautiful or whatever. I don't want that. I want just to be me and what that is and to let that blossom. So that's where you need to go. That is in essence. If you can value that and you say, well, whatever that is, it is lovable, it's sweet and kind, and it is actually has good integrity and doesn't mean harm to anybody, and it's safe, and you can put a value on that for yourself. That isn't narcissistic in nature. That isn't I'm superior. That is unique to me. That's narcissism. Right? That's survival, trying to be better than others. It's like, is that sense of being within you any different than mine? No. Right? It's not. Your sense of aliveness is no different than my sense of aliveness. Okay? So it's not better than yours. I just personally have learned to value it before you did. So here you are, and I'm sitting here going, you got to value that. You have to do it, and you need to do it unconditionally. You have to do it without the idea of a body that needs to be a certain way to do it, because the body isn't the essence of that feeling. It isn't. Right? So if you can do that within yourself, if that is who you are, going back into the identity that you and I were talking about, if you can identify who you are by that existence and that experience of whatever it is that I'm alive and I'm aware of it, and that aliveness is good, and you can value that, ask me that, or I want you to answer this. Do you need to be thinner?
No.
Doesn't that just seem a little like, what's the point of that? What's the point of that? That's just the facade. That's fake. Whether I'm fatter or thinner is irrelevant at this point, because the body isn't what's existing. The body is just giving me the experience. You know. So question, do you really need to be thin? Do you really want your entire existence, okay, and that experience of existence to be dedicated to making your body thin?
That is so good. Sounds insane. It just sounds hilarious. Of course, no.
Right? Don't you want to explore the life that you have? Don't you want to be an explorer now? Don't you want to get out there and be like, why would you even care? Who cares? That's like a detail that is not important. It's like in China, do you really need to have small feet to be loved? Do you really need 3-inch to 4-inch feet and be completely disabled to be lovable? Is that what you want your whole life to be about? Do you want your life to be basically, you're not wrapping your feet to be small, but you're wrapping your body with restrictions and dieting to be small? Is that what your life is supposed to be about, for others to value it? Right? Do you really need that? Or can you just let the body be whatever it is? What is the natural state of your body? What do you think it is? What do you do? What did you say? You're 5'5"?
Yeah, 5'5".
Did you choose that? Did you choose that?
No.
So do you think you really need... Notice how you don't care about 5'5". It's 5'5". Yep. At some point you accepted it. Whether you liked it or not, you accepted it. Now do you have to think about it every day, all day long? No. What do you think the natural body shape your body's supposed to be? Is it supposed to be 110 pounds? Is that natural? Is that what it really is?
No.
Well, then if that's what you have to be, you realize you have to live a life of dieting permanently forever to stay that. Right? So what do you think it is naturally if you're not dieting, if you're like normal, right?
Yeah, naturally it's probably around 120-ish.
Well, what if it's 150?
That's okay too,
Well, if you're okay with that, that means you don't have to think about it ever. You can just let it be. Just like your height. You just let it be. It's none of your business, so you don't have to think about it anymore, do you? And if someone else out there says you need to be less weight, what does that tell you about them? Well, they're taking ownership of your body as if they're telling your body what it should be. Like, I mean, I could see if it was their body and they were God and created bodies, that they would be like, you have to be that. But is it their body that are you supposed to be becoming a certain size for them? Because I mean, again, is it their body? I could see if it was their body that you would have to feel that obligated. But is it their body that they're existing in?
You're so good to make me cry. Thank you.
Is it clear to you? Are you getting some clarity right now?
Yeah, my heart is really touched. I could cry.
Well, good.
Like you said, really ministered to that little girl, just self-worth and value apart from people's ideas of what you should be in life, I guess.
Yeah, if you value that, then what's the whole point of accommodating to all these social rules so strictly?
I think I wanted to ask you, I probably don't need to know why, but my brain always just wondered when you were saying all that, why didn't I do that? Because it feels so normal. As you talked me through it, it felt very natural, like everyone has to do this. It's part of being alive. Why would I have not done that? I mean, I'm 35. Shouldn't I have maybe done that at like 12 years old or something?
Yeah, well, try to do this with a 12-year-old and tell me how it works out. I think that this is a part of natural human evolution and the evolution of consciousness, and you have to suffer sometimes. You believe the fantasy more than you do your own reality, and not only that, but look at the culture we're raised in, look at the culture our parents were raised in. You could say the whole concept of bettering yourself. Can you see where that would be the wolf in sheep's clothing?
Oh, that's good. Yeah, because it has to. Because I felt like as a little girl, I had some of that self-acceptance and love, but it was conditioning in my environment. Yeah.
And don't you agree that's so understandable? A child wants to honor their parents, and they don't question the parents. We as children do not question our parents or other adults, or society is like, maybe there's something wrong with this. Again, I go back to foot binding. You realize that they did that for over 1,000 years. Do you know how many generations passed that down?
Of what, China? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Foot binding.
Yeah, I actually looked that up the other day. Probably a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Over 1,000 years of passing it down. Think of how many generations that was. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like 30 generations of foot binding. I know. And so we've been dealing with thin body binding through the dieting and food restriction for like a century now, right? And it's now real bad to where the amount of people checking into eating disorder clinics has doubled in 6 years, doubled.
Oh, wow.
It's a big deal. Social scientists are studying this. There is an epidemic of eating disorders, and they are, if we broaden it and look at it from a distance, the social scientists studying it are seeing it as a cultural problem. It's not an individual. Obviously, there are cases of individual psychological issues where someone is attracted to body image. But if we look at the broad spectrum of people who are having these signs of disordered eating and eating disorders, most of them don't have trauma. So the old thought process, they don't have trauma, but yet they are still showing these symptoms. And we could say, well, as our culture has become more and more strict with body image, and then the use of the shaming of food and the fear-mongering of food is actually like pouring gas on a fire. And so we have an epidemic of eating disorders. And you are clearly a product of that. And so was I. I just recovered from it miraculously 20 years ago. So I've had time to go back and to think over the course of the last 6-7 years to really rethink, how did I recover from that? And what is it? What were the specific things that I became aware of? You and I in this conversation have gone through very specific things that I became aware of in an out-of-body experience. The awareness that I'm not this body. The awareness that there is an existence of I that experiences this. I didn't have the context or the words to explain that at the time, right? this is in hindsight and years of conversations with people who have experienced the same thing that I've come to this ability to describe it, right? So, you are a product of your third hierarchy of need. Again, we can go to our culture and say, well, it's promoting this concept of you're not good enough until you meet these standards, people. And, there's actually conversations that the generation, the Second World War really created that narcissism. The concept that you have to be perfect. So, which promoted the outrage of the 60s, the baby boomers who said, fuck you. They were a big part of the shift of, the free thinking and the freedom, but they also were very narcissistic in the 1980s with their money and religion and all sorts of stuff like that. And we're just consequential, innocent. Everybody's innocent, to be honest with you. No one really knows what they're doing until they're aware of what they're doing. And then they can make changes. So here we are, and I'm hopefully giving you some insight into what's going on and what needs to change so that you can get free from this. And for me, it was like this. For some people, it takes months of torture. Fear of gaining weight, fear of being abandoned, fear of feeling like I suck as a person, having to have a body that's 300 pounds. It's uncomfortable to recover, It's painful. It's a painful process. But if you really open your mind to see what really exists, it's like you said, all of a sudden, it's like, this is so dumb. Yeah, it is. Why would you want to attach your survival and your life to an identity that requires a thin body? I'd rather not be liked by people. I'd rather be an outcast, because being an outcast to me is a better negativity, right? As a pack animal, than have to live in a constant state of horror in survival mode with food. I'd rather have the freedom of my personal existence, if that makes sense, than to have to be a slave to doing what other people want me to do and to take my life to become what they think my life should be like. I'm lifeless if I do that. I have no autonomy. There's no free will in that. I'm not a free agent if I don't run the life that I've been giving from within. The child inside at some point was told to go into a dungeon and never come out because it's too weak. It's not good enough. You have to be this and that. And you need to make your body this way, and you have to be smarter than that. And we have to do all these things for other people to tell us when we are lovable. So you're in a state of survival till the day you die. So there are generations of people who've never experienced anything other than survival mode. And the funny thing is they actually praise it, like being perfectionistic is praiseworthy. Being obsessive compulsive is a great thing. Being all or nothing. Yeah, like it's been praised. The perfectionism has been praised. That is not a sign of safety. That's a sign you are not safe. That's a sign of inflammation in the brain, And then you have to get self-help to be gracious and loving, but never realizing that the belief systems that you've created to feel lovable as a human actually are not gracious. So how are you going to implement love and forgiveness and grace when the beliefs that you're living from are not gracious at all? Does that make sense? Anyways. Okay. Do you have any questions for me?